Welcome to Ghoul Talk.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris A, and welcome to the very first installment of Ghoul Talk. So since this is the first installment, I'll explain a little bit about what I want Ghoul Talk to be, and hopefully I can accomplish that. If you have suggestions or feedback, let me know in the comments. Basically, the idea here is I want to present some ideas that are politically loaded, maybe have become cliches or things like that. Maybe become boogeymen. And I want to kind of present these ideas in a way that is accessible to normies or boomers or people who are not necessarily super engaged. Basically, what I want to do is if you hear a word on Fox News, and that's the only place you've ever heard it, I just want to explain what it means, what it really means, what it doesn't mean, things like that. I also want to explain what this video series is not. So these are not going to be heavily researched topics. This isn't going to be academically rigorous. This isn't going to hold up in court or in a debate, but it's not meant to. This is really just something that you can show your parents or your grandparents or maybe your Fox News bubble peers, and just kind of give them the other side to the story. So if you hear anything that you might think, oh, there's a logical fallacy there, or, you forgot to mention this historical fact, that's really not what I'm going for. You will be able to dispute things I say in these videos, but again, this is kind of a jumping off point for if someone comes to you and says, what do you think about X? You can say, well, Chris A told me such and such. So this is going to be unscripted, a little more casual. I've got a beverage with me. I wanted to do a glass of wine, but there are two problems with that. I don't drink wine, and glasses are triggering for me. Which brings us to our first topic today, trigger warnings. Yeah, sip. So triggers are a psychological phenomenon. I think they're psychological. Technically, they happen in the brain. I did a video on Minority Report a couple months ago. And one of the characters had lost a child. And so she was triggered by her husband because her husband reminded her of her child. That's really all it is. It's just a thing that sets off something else in your mind. It may be rational. It may be irrational. I don't think we could say that it's unfair for her to get triggered having lost a 7-year-old son, or it could be very mild things. Like I said, I don't like drinking out of glasses. They trigger my obsessive compulsive disorder, which is why I drink most of my water out of one of these reusable bottle things. So a trigger warning is just a way to express that what we're about to talk about may be triggering to some people. We're dealing with sensitive topics that you may feel uncomfortable about. This is nothing new. We do this with movies, we do this with television, with video games, even with music. If you go and see a movie, chances are beforehand you know what it's rated and why it's rated that. You'll know if there are scenes of violence or sexuality or things like that. And those things, that's essentially a trigger warning. There are basically three ways to look at this. One, this trigger warning doesn't apply to me, and I'm just going to read the story. Two, this trigger warning does apply to me, so now I'm better prepared when I read about that stuff. I will kind of be mentally prepared. Or three, maybe I just won't read this. In an academic setting, maybe a professor might say, tomorrow we're going to get into such and such a sensitive topic. If that is upsetting to you, be prepared. A lot of people think it's a cop-out. A lot of people think it's, a way to coddle people. It's just a way to prepare. It's just a way to say, this is what we're going to talk about, and either be ready or sit the conversation out. But if you sit the conversation out, you face consequences, right? Like if you decide not to go to class, you will either miss that day or you'll have to work with your professor to make up that time. It's not a free pass. I've never experienced it as a free pass. It's just a way to communicate. Here are some sensitive things that we're going to be discussing. Safe spaces. Let's talk about safe spaces next. I would say, like trigger warning, safe space is just a newer buzzword to describe something that's been around for at least several decades. When I was in college, I first experienced the term safe space. So basically what you would do, if I remember correctly, is you would go through a certain training. It wasn't super rigorous, maybe an online course or something like that. And then when you pass that course, you get a little sticker and it said safe space, and you put that on your dorm room. Let's say you are a gay person or a queer person of any stripes, and your roommate really hated that. And one day you had a bad day and you came back and your roommate was being all shady. You might feel as if your room was not a safe space. And I'm not saying like capital S, just a space that is not safe. You might feel uncomfortable sleeping in the same room as someone who clearly doesn't really like you that much. And so you could go, maybe your next door neighbor has that sticker on their door, and you could knock on the door and say, hey, I've been feeling a certain kind of way about my roommate. Maybe you and I can talk about it, or maybe I can just hang out, So safe spaces are really just public, semi-public areas where they would best be described as like judgment-free zones, right? So you might be guaranteed, okay, in this space, we don't tolerate homophobia or queerphobia of any kind. And the reason I say that this idea has been around for so long is if you go to someone's house and you insult them over and over again and you maybe say some really terrible things, they have every right to ask you to leave. Because in some ways that is their safe space where this is my home. You don't come into my house and make me feel less than or make me feel unsafe. So I'm going to kick you out. That is not a hindrance on their free speech, or it is, but not really in a significant way. You do have free speech, but you also have to face the consequences in interpersonal settings. And I would say there's actually an argument that safe spaces encourage free expression. Again, going back to the example of you are a queer student, you go into another student's room that's been designated a safe space. Chances are you will feel more empowered to express your experience, your struggle, your identity, because this is a safe space. You won't be judged for saying, I am queer, I am trans, I am non-binary. That's just my perspective, but I did recently read an article about a former Navy SEAL, I believe, who visited Yale and visited some of these safe spaces, and he said the same thing. He said he was politically opposite some of these students, but when he went into a safe space, he found that students were more open-minded, more willing to speak their mind, more willing to express themselves because of the safety of the space. Safe spaces are not meant to shut down conversation. They're just meant to limit conversation. If you come in here, you can't be racist. That's what a safe space is, really. So a lot of people on the right actually love safe spaces because they find that when they are on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or these more well-known platforms, they're more likely to get fact-checked or TOS'd, which means terms of service, which just means they get kicked off for breaking the rules. So they create these platforms that have fewer rules, which allow them to speak more freely, which for them becomes a safe space. So thanks for watching this first episode of Ghoul Talk. I hope you learned a little something. I hope I've equipped you with some talking points that you can use when you're talking to maybe your right-wing friends or family members, or even your centrist friends, or just people who are politically disengaged, who maybe hear the word safe space and they instantly have this thought. If you have any suggestions for any topics, any words, phrases, symbols, talking points, anything like that that you want to see explained or debunked in a conversational way, in a way that doesn't require a ton of research or a ton of rhetorical ability, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you'd like to see me cover in the future. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, ding the bell icon, give me a comment, do all that good stuff. Post it on Reddit, share it on Twitter, you know the deal. I also want to say thank you so much. I have recently reached 250 subscribers, and I'm really grateful. So thanks to everyone who has subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Even if you hate watch my videos, because I know I've got a few of those out there. You know, just give me that subscription. And I'll see you around.
Music.